Hi, everybody. Tina Brock, Producing Artistic Director here at the Idiopathic Radiculopathy Consortium in Philadelphia. I'm your host for Into the Absurd, a virtually existential dinner conversation. I do hope you'll join us the next 50 minutes. Sit back and relax as we explore the lives, the hearts, the minds, and the spirits of creators in Philadelphia region and around the world. And good afternoon, everybody. Hi, I'm Tina Brock, your host for Into the Absurd. Thanks for joining us. I'm coming to you today from Dublin, which is going to factor very prominently into our discussion today with Michael Toner and Padre Devine. And I'm not pronouncing that correctly, but I'm going to let Michael Toner do that. I try and I just can't get it right. So we're so delighted you've joined us today. If you're coming in on Facebook or if you're coming in the Zoom dining room, thank you. And please put your questions in the chat for Michael and for Patrick. We're going to talk about all things Irish, all things theater related, in a project they worked on together called Eternal Warrior. So Michael Toner, he has, you know him so well in Philadelphia theater and around the world, predominantly working in Irish theater, very much working in Irish theater, and I can't wait to talk to him about that as a dialect coach and also as a director and an actor. And Patrick Devine, who is a veteran and who worked with Michael as a director on a project called Eternal Warrior. So let's get them both to the table, Michael Toner and Patrick Devine, and talk to you both about all things Irish theater related and your work together on Eternal Warrior. Hello. I worked so hard on it, Patrick.
It's okay.
So I'm just going to hand the baton to Michael and let him do all, as the dialect coach, let him do all the work today. So welcome to you both for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so delighted. So Patrick and I met. Patrick's a neighbor. We met in the street one day. I found about this wonderful project that you worked on, Michael, and it just got me thinking about all the wonderful ways in which theater touches our lives and the connections we make culturally and whatnot. So that's what brought our conversation together. So I'm going to start, Michael, let's start with you. You totally had me fooled because I didn't know until 5 minutes ago, even though I've known you for a little while, that you, A, were not from Ireland, and that B, I thought for some reason I had this story in my mind that you were, educated in, you were a theater person from way back. So I think I guess the question I have for you to start is you have quite a resume of Irish theater, of all Beckett, Friel, you name it. Is that something that you set out to do, or did it find you? Were you just central casting for the Irish character?
Well, first of all, I'd have to describe myself as an uneducated coochie from way back. So we should correct you there. I did sort of find it, Irish theater. I sort of fell into it in an unusual way. I consider my first acting gigs actually the performance art of when I was an altar boy in grade school, and that performing for an audience thing. But as we were talking earlier, I had spent 2 years in Ireland, and when I got back to Philadelphia, where I'm from, friends of mine who were a group of wonderful ensemble actors, actually Dennis Gilday, there was Susan Turley, she was in there, Greg Gillespie, they said, you've got this interesting experience in Ireland and you've gone to see all this theater. Why don't you join us and audition for some plays here? They were working at Society Hill Playhouse, run by the late Dean and Jay Cogan. So I did, and got cast. I think the first play, I remember the first play we did. It was called The Churchill Play by Howard Brenton. It lasted about 3 nights. There was no audience for it. Dean did a lot of experimental European plays and British plays, and this was sort of political satire on Churchill by Howard Brenton, who was a very political playwright, still with us, I believe. Anyway, it flopped big time. When I came back, I remember doing a Friel play there, my first Friel play, and I was already well aware of Brian Friel and his stature and well-earned as a playwright. And he used to write fiction for the New Yorker also. But I sort of, from my Irish, doing my advanced degree at University College Dublin, and I had read a lot of Irish theatre. I'd seen a lot of Irish theatre. So it easily fell into making this a specialty of mine. And I had traveled around, the island of Ireland, studying people, one of my favorite pastimes, just sitting in a pub or a coffee shop, people watching, as you can do in Paris, New York, London, Philadelphia. And you learn a lot by watching people. And in my travels, I learned different accents. I learned how people sort of, what their physical attitudes would be. And all this was background stuff that I would use as an actor myself in theater. Went on to do, like we were talking about, the Villanova Shakespeare Festival, which was a great training place. Philadelphia Shakespeare Festival I've done too. Shakespeare's always wonderful to work with. And but anyway, Irish theater, as I got to do it and I got cast in more and more sort of Irish roles, hoping not to get just typecast. But I am deeply grateful for so many Irish playwrights, because they've given me a career. Specifically in the present time, I'm just so happy for what's the last play I did? Conor McPherson. Conor McPherson always has an old guy in his plays. So if somebody in Philly is going to do a Conor McPherson play, I know I'm going to at least get an audition. And but I did enjoy doing The Night Alive recently with Inishnua Theatre. But anyway, it became my specialty. I had gone back to Ireland many times now with the idea of I'm looking for new character people. I'm looking for new information on accents, be it my people. My cousins are from Northern Ireland, Draperstown, County Derry, and I have cousins in Belfast. And as you know, Tina, and so does Podrick, the accent and the aspect of personality can be considerably different in the North than it is in the South. Much more Scottish influence and Lowland Scots and Elizabethan English, actually, from when Midlands English people emigrated to Northern Ireland in a historical situation that has gone on to this day. Perhaps Podrick can tell you more about that.
Yeah, I want to get to, so because Podrick, you were born in Dublin, right?
Yeah, born
and then
raised
you came over. I want to get to Eternal Warrior in just a second. One just circling back for a second, Michael, about you've done a number of Samuel Beckett plays, and certainly you spoke of Friel and Conor McPherson. And is there something about working on Irish literature that you feel provides an experience that is different than, say, other work that you do?
Well, there's the language aspect that is obviously different. The way you would work with Shakespeare is similar to working a lot of Irish plays, even contemporary ones. There's a musical aspect to the scripts often, and if you can find that music, you can more fully, bring alive the character. But there are dialectical differences. There are going to be phrases, say a contemporary Dublin play. There's going to be a lot of slang words and stuff that you don't know in standard English or American English. If you're doing a play where you're a country coolshe, say, out in the wilds of Kerry or Donegal, Mayo, playboy of the Western world land, sort of. And Synge in particular, obviously, he wrote his plays with the Irish language heavily in mind. But it is different. It is different, and there's a different feel to the characters than you would find in American or British characters. There's often the emotional range is often very great.
Mm-hmm.
And I myself, personally, I feel if I get cast in an Irish play, and I feel very strongly about this, because I am a Yank, but I feel I have to bring this character alive as fully and authentically Irish as I can. And that's an obligation, I feel, almost a moral obligation to the script, to the playwright, to the director. So there's considerable difference. And
in the sort of blooming of the spiritual aspect of it. You spoke about your allegiance to it, which kind of is embodied in you, the actor, feeling this strong need to capture what makes Irish plays and Irish culture and these communities, these villages sing, the fabric of it. So Patrick, let's you tell us about meeting Michael.
It started through the Eternal Warrior theater group. I'd been involved with Eternal Soldier for several years, and they asked me if I'd be interested in doing it, and I said sure. The theme was homecoming, which a lot of veterans at the moment are kind of dealing with. And when I met Michael, first time, we all gave a little spiel as to where we were from and so on. And I said I was born and raised in Dublin, and I couldn't see it, but I'm sure Michael's antenna went up because straight away we made a connection because he lived in Dublin and he worked in Dublin and so on. And obviously with his specialty in the arts being Irish plays and so on, we made a connection right there and then through that. But we also had a connection because we're both veterans. Mm-hmm. And that kind of gave us a double whammy, which allowed us to be very comfortable with each other. And we just hit it off from the moment we saw each other on the screen, basically. We've basically become friends, even though we've never actually met in person. So you spoke of Eternal Soldier. Yeah.
Patrick, right? Tell us just a little bit about Eternal Soldier. And Michael, are you a part of Eternal Soldier as well? Did you?
Yes, I mean, I was there at the foundings when I lost my leg, 5 years ago. I didn't go to the meetings anymore. I couldn't go to the meetings. The logistics of it were too difficult. But I am sort of a member. Mm-hmm. And I hope to be able to do more now with Kimberly, Max Brown, and the whole group there. By the way, Max, as we call her, she deserves special credit. She organized this whole Eternal Soldier readings, asked me to be director. But she spent months and months, and I worked under her, and she's a wonderful boss, wonderful organizer. And she, we managed to find the veterans who wanted to do this and the theme of homecoming. And, Padraig can tell you more about it, the experience as a reader.
This was a virtual project that you all came together and did. Michael, you directed it last year, and this is for Veterans Day?
Yes.
Yeah. Patrick, was it? And so Patrick... go ahead.
No, I was going to say, it was under the auspices of both the Philadelphia VA Hospital and the University of Pennsylvania, their classics department, their archaeology department people, getting veterans to, the general idea is to get veterans to read classical literature as perhaps a healing thing for their war experiences. That's sort of a general picture of what they do. They do many other things.
So Patrick, how is theater acting something that had been in your back pocket for a while? Your secret back pocket?
I thought about it once or twice through my life. Every Irishman does. We all think we can sing and we all think we can act. But getting back to the Eternal Soldier and Eternal Warrior, obviously Max and Bridget Moynihan, Professor Bridget Moynihan, who's in the Greek department at Penn, and Dr. Andrew Stone were the ones that really brought it together initially. And the idea, as Michael said, was to get veterans together, some who have already been exposed to the Greek classics and some that hadn't, and to read it and to look for parallels, specifically through their travels home in the plays, and then some of the things that we encountered so many centuries later, but they're basically the same thing, just in a different world, basically. And the first group was very small. I think there were 5 or 6 of us. But Max was there, and Andrew Stone were in the group, and we all had dialogue about the Odyssey, and it helped quite a few people to come to grips with the fact that this is not a new phenomenon. This is something that has been written about, centuries and centuries and centuries ago, and it's repeated itself throughout history with every conflict, every war. The people that come home don't always settle back into society the way they want to, or the way society wants them to. So that's how it kind of came about. And at this point, I think all told, we've done 6 or 7 different readings of different plays. We've done the Odyssey twice. And each one has a kind of just built on the initial concept of finding things in the Greek classics that can help modern day veterans reacquaint themselves with the world around them and not look at it through a soldier's eyes. So that's pretty much what it does.
Did it do that for you?
To some extent, yeah.
In what way?
Well, every veteran, and I've talked to 50 or 60, 70 veterans about this from different conflicts. At some point in our journey home, let's say, we feel that we're experiencing things that nobody else has ever experienced, or no one else is dealing with this, or no one else is going through this. But in all actuality, we all go through it. And just knowing that there's other people around you that can see the parallels in these works that you're seeing, and saying, well, that's kind of like what's happening with me. And then, of course, the veterans get together, and then we discuss it without anyone else around, because that's what veterans do. And it helps in that regard. It kind of builds a community within an already existing community. A lot of veterans, if you ever went to the VA, you'd see it. There's no veteran walks in there without talking to at least 4 or 5 different people, even if they don't know them. Mm-hmm. It's just when you walk in that door, everyone else that's in there is just like you in many ways. And you kind of relax a little bit when you walk in that door. And being a part of the Eternal Warrior does that for you. It when you sit down and you start to discuss the readings, it kind of takes you out of where you are, but loops you right back around again, because you're talking about things that are affecting you every day. So yeah, it helps. It really does.
Michael, when you began to direct Patrick in the workshop production, tell me about the process of selecting the works, or I'm interested in your first how you selected the works that Patrick ended up doing.
Okay.
The O'Casey, was it not?
Yes.
There's a story here.
Very interesting, to me, anyway. But I first had to earn the Veterans Trust, as a fellow veteran, from the Vietnam War era. And Patrick, as soon as I found out that he was a Dubliner, an Irishman, I immediately got very excited, started thinking, as I said, started thinking of different plays and monologues from plays that he could do, from Irish theater. And I thought, this is really great. If I can sell this to this guy, and I didn't know if I could. And it was in our first one-on-one rehearsal together, that he said he's interested in doing maybe something of Sean O'Casey's. He loves Sean O'Casey's, writing and plays. And I thought, bingo, I got this guy. And the first thing I suggested to him was a play he didn't know at all, George Bernard Shaw, one-act play, presumably a recruiting play for World War I. Shaw wrote it in 1915, I believe, called O'Flaherty VC, VC being Victoria Cross. And I had a monologue from that play that I did. So I thought, this is about a 3.5-minute monologue. This would be perfect for Podrick. I didn't really know him well yet, but I just had a feeling, an instinct that he would really like this, and it was Shaw. And he read it, and he said, yeah, okay. I mean, I think he had some objections, but he was willing to do that. And it was actually a very, I can't say anti-war play per se, but the fellow Dinny O'Flaherty, he's won the Victoria Cross, and he's coming back to Ireland with a recruiting officer, General Sir Piers Madigan, and he's going to try to recruit fellow Irishmen to go off and fight in World War I. And he ends up upsetting the apple cart and letting this general know that he really doesn't want to do this. He doesn't want to send Irishmen over there. And this general is an Anglo-Irish gentry person. He's a different upper-class person. He has no idea of the kind of war that Dinny O'Flaherty himself went through, in the front lines, earning the Victoria Cross, seeing his best friends die right beside him. This all comes out gradually in the monologue, which also has some great humor. But anyway, Podrick went for that. And then I said, yes, and I've got an O'Casey for you. His play, The Silver Tassie, which was very controversial when O'Casey wrote it in 1928. I saw it done in 1972 in the Abbey Theatre when I was living in Dublin as was a student. It was 1972 was the first time this play had been done in the Abbey in Ireland since 1928. It was a very controversial, again, war play. It was an expressionist play. The whole of Act Two is expressionism, surrealism on the field of battle. And it is a character who is also having a homecoming from the war. He's been this great athlete in Dublin. He's played rugby and he's played our soccer, our English EPL football. And Podrick has played these sports as a young man in Dublin, and has been good at it. And this fellow, Harry Hegan, he has won three trophies. Nobody's ever won 3 trophies before for the Avondale Football Club, I think it is. And he's going off to war with his best friend, Barney Bagnall. Again, it's World War I. They experience the horrors of war. And Harry Hegan, the great hero who wants to marry, his fiancée, his girlfriend that he's been courting in Dublin. Harry comes home and he's a double amputee. He's lost both legs. Now I can identify with that to a good degree myself personally. Anyway, he comes home to a homecoming, which is he's legless. His fiancée is now going to marry and run off with his best friend, Barney Bagnall, who he served in World War I with. Bagnall's stealing Harry's girl, his fiancée. And he has a very dim future, and he's very angry, and he's very, all the experiences of war in this homecoming of there's nothing to come home to. It's a very powerful piece. And I took sections of the Act 4, the last act, the climax, and made it into a monologue for Podrick. And, I said, don't worry about acting. You just are going to do readings. This is a reading, but put as much as you can, as much as you feel safe with emotionally, because after all, Podrick, and every other of the readers, they've experienced war and combat. They have to a certain degree of PTSD, and I know that context. I have it myself. And I said, don't push yourself too much. If it's bothering you too much emotionally, back off. The way a director would do in any play. And Padraig, I said, you don't really have to do acting. We're just doing a reading. But as much as you feel comfortable with, put it into these 2 monologues. And he did. He acted them, in fact. He did what we ask actors to do. He risked everything. He just filled it emotionally. And I had professional actors who had watched that podcast, in different parts of the country, call me later and say, that Irish guy, he was really, really something. That was really powerful. And, so I give all the credit to Padraig. I just pointed him in the direction, and he took the football and scored the touchdown with it, to use a metaphor.
So, Padraig, it sounds like there were a lot of aspects of your life that fit right into the character.
Absolutely.
That you could. I guess a question for you, Padraig, is when you were working on it, did you? It sounds like you didn't put any limits on yourself, that you just dove into it and brought everything to the table. Was there a time where you thought to yourself, I'm going too far?
There were a few times. Initially, when I started to work with both the monologues, especially after Michael telling me, only go as far as you feel comfortable and so on. I actually, the first couple of readings I did with Michael, they were more like science reports than reading a monologue. I was very flat, very unemotional, as a phrase that many of my friends use when I was I kind of had just switched off and just reported what was in front of me, kind of thing. But the more I read about, and obviously other than the monologues, I actually went in and read the plays and did a little background on who these characters were supposed to be. And it basically sucked me in, to be honest with you. The more I did it, the more it sucked me in and the more I wanted to do it. And there were a few times when my wife, Karen, had said, I would come upstairs and do my things. And she said, she would ask me, are you okay? Because she could tell that it was taking a lot out of me. Not just the work, but the emotional aspect of it. Because as Michael said, both of these characters had parallels to my life. And being that they were Irish and they both served in the British Army, and I'm Irish and I served in the US Army. So there were so many different things that joined me to them, as in that they kind of took on a life, even though they were just characters. I kind of viewed them as real, and it just sucked me in. And there were a few times I had to leave it alone for several days because I just couldn't go back to it. So,
when you say it sucked you in, Padraig, does that mean explain that? Is that you had a need to communicate? Yes,
and I felt I wanted to do this for many more reasons other than just the homecoming thing. I wanted to tell the story that both of these playwrights were trying to tell with this, and tried to get across as well as I could what happens to people inside when they go through these things. One of the things that, as Michael was saying with the Silver Tassie, the guy that stole the girlfriend was also the guy that his life was saved by the lead character, and that's why he got the VC. So there was an enormous kind of betrayal there as well. So, but it's really hard to explain this. When I say I got sucked in, it just, I had a need to want to tell and to do it justice, I guess. I mean, I could have read the Odyssey or any of the other Homer plays, or I could have found something else that I didn't connect with, other than the fact that it was homecoming. And I think that's basically, and of course, the way Michael just kept feeding me every time we did a rehearsal together. He would just let me go, and then he'd go back and say, okay, well, and as we talked about prior, he had to help me not be a 20th century Irishman. I had to go back. In what way? Well, both the characters. Well, one of them was from Dublin, the other one was from the country, and they both speak very differently than I do. Even the way that the dialogue is written, which is very, I guess, synonymous with Irish plays and Irish authors. They tend to write the way that people speak. And I was trying to at first do it like I'm talking to you now.
Can you do it? You know, I was going to ask you. All right, no, not with your dialect coach here. I won't ask you to do it. That was terribly unfair. I'm sorry.
No. Well, I'll just give you an example. Okay, a Dublin accent is kind of very flat, like this, like, you know, at the very base level. But then as you go up in levels of education and so on, the accent kind of changes. Now, the O'Flaherty VC character, as Michael said he was a farm boy who went away to fight a war and came back. But his world had completely changed. He was no longer just a farm boy, but he still thought like a farm boy and spoke. And his accent was like kind of like this, like he talked like a countryman, not a Dubliner. And that's where Michael's specialty came in. He was able to pinpoint the things that I needed to change in the way I spoke to highlight the accents and to differentiate between the two. And after a while, to be honest with you, especially with the Silver Tassie, I just kind of reverted back to the accent I had when I was a child. And that wasn't an issue for me. But the O'Flaherty piece was the more challenging in that regard. And that's where Michael was like so valuable, so I don't know if that answered what your question, but.
Definitely. Yes. And I threw a total fast curve something at you there. And
well.
Thank you for being, there's a bunch of questions in here. I want to try to get to, Max Brown is weighing in. And
hi, Max.
And she's, would you like, so I guess for either one of you guys, would you like to perform Eternal Warrior differently? Would you prefer an in-person performance? I guess the genesis, I don't want to speak, but it sounds like, would you do it differently if you could do it again? And, or how did the virtual world satisfy? I'm totally interpreting this question, but I think they're good avenues to think about for you. Maybe as I was going to ask you, Michael, as a director, how the virtual format informed this piece that you all performed. I mean, obviously it made it possible, but are there aspects of the virtual that illuminated the project?
That's a very good question. It's first of all, it was my first attempt at directing something virtually. So I'm a complete novice at this. So I tried to approach it as as humbly, but as it's a very challenging thing, as well as the material and the actors who didn't know me at all. It's not like I'm doing a play here in Philadelphia where I might know half the cast, so, and again, you'd have to earn their trust as part of the rehearsal process as fellow veterans, because you're talking about homecoming, you're talking about these people, be they trauma nurse or a combat infantryman. They've all experienced considerable PTSD. So it's a very delicate thing. But, to get back to, I personally, of course, as an actor, would always prefer live stage performance. So directing in this media, again, as a novice, my first time, I tried to go for more subtlety, to be as subtle as possible. We're not going to do big hand gestures. Everything's going to be on the face. Everything's going to be like doing film work. The least nuanced facial gesture can tell you a million things to the camera. And you want the camera to love you, as Michael Caine says, and not hate you. So you have to learn to just be more subtle, and I try to keep that in my mind at all times. Vocally, to really, a lot of stuff is going to have to come out vocally, because we're not physicalizing this at all, and I'm not working with professional actors. So the more I could tune into nuance, go really soft here at this tender moment, describing, with Podrick, just where Harry Hegan, the amputee Harry Hegan has a reminiscence of him, making love on the sofa with his fiance. And, we have to get really almost whispering here, and also the memory is hitting you, it's almost like you're reliving the moment. So vocally that has to, we have to change here. And then when you hit an angry part, you're angry at both Barney and I forget, what was the fiance's name?
I don't remember.
But anyway, that's terrible that I'm missing it. Another wonderful senior moment. But anyway, when you get angry at the couple, boom, we want to raise your voice vocally, but we don't want to break your audio on your computer. Where we can do these nuanced things as subtly as possible and bring out emotions on sound. This is where there's going to be more focus on this. Had we been on the stage, which I would prefer, we could actually be physicalizing things too. And that's a whole another part of the story, as you well know, Tina,
Sure. Yeah. And just the energy that comes out from the audience to help you.
And yes, the audience
create the story together.
Exactly. And that's the other thing that I'm glad you mentioned that, because we don't have a live audience feeding us 50% of the play, that wonderful audience energy. So you have to imagine it. Imagine that you're talking to an intimate group of people, in a room, just a small group, but yet it could be hundreds or thousands. So the imagination came into play for all of these readers, and they did a wonderful job with that, I must say. I was very, very happy with that.
Patrick, let me ask you, speaking of the virtual medium, was there any sort of safety in it for you? In the sense of I'm not in a room full of a lot of people. I don't have a bunch of people staring at me. I don't have all that energy coming at me. I have my space.
Yes. On multiple levels. Not being an actor, but having been on what we call platform and teaching and stuff like this, when somebody steps on the stage or they step on a platform, there's an expectation from their audience, whether it be students or whether it be a paying audience. In the virtual world, you don't have that. It's not pressing on you because you don't have anyone in front of you except yourself, basically. It also kind of puts you in a little cocoon, whereby you can be as ornery as you want to be. You can be as sad as you want to be. And again, you're not doing it for anyone else other than yourself, because you don't see anybody. And it made it a lot easier, I think, for me anyway. I can't speak to for the other veterans. I had no nerves whatsoever with it. Whereas even when I would get up on a platform to teach a class in the Army on a subject that I knew inside out, there's always a little nerves. And you know this, you're an actress. It doesn't make a difference how well you know the part. When you step on stage, that wasn't there. So I felt like I was in this little cocoon in this room, and I could go anywhere I wanted with it, and I wouldn't be judged. So it made it so much easier to do.
That's so interesting. Go.
But having said that, I wouldn't mind trying a live performance of it. Only because I think, especially with the Silver Tassie, it's a very physical play, or to begin with, and not having a lot of the external physical movement and the scenes, or they're not the scenes. It's gone. Anyway, you have things to work with on a stage that we didn't have sitting here. I think people would actually understand the monologue much better if they could see at the tables and the cup, and because at the end of the play, he takes the cup. He says he's going to mind the cup, which means he's going to take care of it. Well, what he does is he destroys it, which in the play itself he does. But obviously, I couldn't do that. But so I think people didn't quite get that. I've spoken to a few people, and they were like, "I didn't get that bit. What was with the cup?" So yeah, I would like to try a physical, like in person kind of thing, just for that aspect, not for anything else. So
I do wonder, Michael, if there's and I think we probably answered that question. Everyone who's been working in this medium, doing theater and doing, readings and whatnot, that there may be a place to work on internal work on some level, on virtually in a way that Patrick was talking about, because it is a little cocooned in that regard. I just wonder about that exploration of very internal and sensitive work. It's just an interesting thing to think about, in your workshop, what that was like for Patrick. And I think it probably requires different muscles from you, Michael, much more sensitive, observational, not that you don't use that when it's on the stage, but there's so much less distraction in this medium.
Yes.
Right. That you have to be sort of laser focused on these minute changes that you're seeing. I'll ask you, Michael, was there a palpable sort of change or release that you saw in Patrick from the beginning of, from the time when you started really mining the material till the end of and the same question for you as well, Patrick, did you feel different?
Yes, I mean, working with him on these particular dramatic pieces, it was easy to see in the beginning. Patrick talked about it himself, feeling a certain flatness. He would call himself on it in rehearsal. I would say, "Go ahead and read," and I'd be taking notes and listening and watching it carefully. And but he finished the monologue and said, "That was crap. Let me start over. I can't stand what I just did." So he was correcting himself to a good degree all along, and this is great help to me. It made things a lot easier for me, obviously, as a director. And I did notice a stiffness at first. Sometimes. And I didn't have to say it to him. I could see him maybe resisting the material. And again, this is degree of difficulty 10, this play by O'Casey, the Silver Tassie. Like I say, it wasn't done for years and years because people couldn't handle it, And But gradually, when he got more confidence in himself and saw what he wanted to do, and I didn't really have to say anything verbally, he saw that he wanted to really bring this character alive, and I could see he really worked at from one rehearsal to the next. There was, I remember there was a giant leap where I thought to myself, Padraig's really acting this now. He's really getting the handle on this character. He has delved very deeply into the psychology of this maimed veteran who's maimed physically, but also psychologically, facing this blank future. And this, I didn't have to talk too much about that with Padraig. I didn't have to say, oh, you got to find this and this and this. He found it on his own, and he found it very quickly. And like I say, his instincts were wonderful. They were the instincts of a real actor. And, giant leaps were occurring, emotionally and character shaping wise that, I complimented Padraig, at the end of rehearsals and stuff, but I didn't really have to talk to him too much about that. And I was I credit him, really. I just pointed to certain directions and he would find that path himself, which I think is always better for an actor than a director who's going to tell you every little piece and do it this way and this way, give you line readings, etc. I don't like to work that way, and no actor is crazy about that either, as you know. But it was a nice progress. It was wonderful progress that he made through both of these roles, without me having to, again, verbalize too much about that emotional content, that spiritual content, this person's soul, and psychological, what's going on inside that world.
Padraig, I keep going back in my mind to the idea, to your saying, I forget exactly how you described it. The idea is I have to tell this story.
Yeah.
This character needs to be. Can you speak a little more about that? Did that involve just excitement and a connection that you felt that you had just intuitively understood this and a need to tell the story so others would understand?
I don't think I ever got excited about it, and I'll explain why. It became a labor of love, basically, rather than something that I was really enthusiastic about. And as I said before, it kind of sucked me in. The more I did it, the more I connected, because at first, as Michael said, there was a resistance. And I didn't want to let too much of myself out, which is something a lot of veterans do. We're very guarded. And the more I did this, the more I thought about it. And the more it kind of dug inside me, like it broke down my wall, as we say. I started putting a little bit of me into it. And towards the end, I could definitely see that it was not just me making a report, that it had become part of me and I'd become part of it, kind of thing. And what it also did, and again, this goes back to veterans being guarded and stuff. It was telling part of my story as well as me telling their story, if that makes any sense. It allowed me to, I guess, put some of the feelings that I had about the things that I've been involved in on the table, but they weren't really me. Does that make sense? You sit around and veterans sit around and they talk, but we tend to make jokes about combat. We tend to make jokes about the things that we do because it's an easy way to get through it and talk about it, or we don't talk about it at all. This was a way for me to kind of expand my vocal world. And it really helped me to feel a little bit more comfortable talking about my experiences, but through Harry Hegan and through O'Flaherty, if that makes sense to anybody. And at the towards, there was a huge change. I wasn't excited about it, but I was very comfortable at the end, which I think allowed me to be able to do it. And thank you, Michael. You gave me an enormous compliment there, but without your guidance and pointing me in the right directions, and just us talking about the monologues, I don't think if it had been a director that wasn't a vet, I don't think he would have been able to tweak me the right way to allow me to get to where I got to, because Michael understands what I was trying to get at, because Michael's been through it too. And we talked, he and I talked about this a couple of times, that, the fact that he is a veteran, and is a combat veteran, and for every one of us that took part in the Eternal Soldier Theater workshop, he was able to understand some of the things that they were trying to say with the pieces that they chose. And because Michael had done these monologues himself and was very familiar with this material, I think it made it easier for me to understand what he was asking me to do, and it just went so easy. I mean, he was. I don't think if it had been another director who wasn't a vet, I don't think it would have happened. I don't think it would have worked. So, thank you, Michael.
Yeah, don't thank me. It hit me, Tina, as an addendum to what Padraig just said, and this is perhaps unrelated, but a couple of days ago, I talked to a fellow veteran, friend of mine, a black man who lives in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. We were in the same platoon in Vietnam, and we talked about almost all the firefights that we were in, the major ones, and we talked for 2 hours, and he was a person. There was one very bad night ambush, and all the ambush patrols and LP from the perimeter had been wiped out. He was the only person who survived, and he played dead to survive. We talked for 2 hours, and it was in the nature of a communion. There was, in a sense, real healing and intimate sharing between us about this. And I found directing these veterans the same thing. I would say it's in the nature of a communion, and that being a veteran myself and these experienced combat veterans, we trusted and had this communion-like feel, this spiritual connection that helped elucidate the text, that helped elucidate their readings as almost an essential part of the whole process. And I think that's something special about all of these veterans that I found. I came away humbled and moved very much as a human being, moved by all of them, their work, their performance, and by who they were, really, and what they had survived. It's absolutely fascinating. One reader, actually, it wasn't Padraig, but one reader was having trouble one rehearsal, and they said to me, you have to cut me a break here. You have to understand I have PTSD. And I kind of smiled and said, well, listen, we all have PTSD, even your director. very good company. Don't worry about it. Relax. You'll be okay. And they did. They performed wonderfully throughout the rehearsals. But something special about these people that I noticed, and their willingness to do this kind of work, which is not, it's acting work, Right. It's not their everyday jobs. It's fascinating to me.
If I may, one of the things I noticed about the other veterans that took part in this is, even though some of them had chosen pieces from the Odyssey and other works that I was familiar with and I'd read, their reading of it, I could see what they were trying to get out of that piece by doing it. And in a couple of there was one young lady, I forget her name, forgive me. But I'd read that, I must have read that piece that she did 30 times in the last 3 or 4 years. But yet when she delivered it, I got something out of it that I didn't get out of it when I read it, because she delivered it for her own purpose. And I think that happened pretty much with every one of the veterans that was there. They left something behind when they finished whatever piece they chose to read. And it was really, it impressed the hell out of me, excuse my French, that they were able to do this, because I know what the world of a veteran is. And I know how, as I said before, how guarded and how reluctant we are to share outside of the community with a lot of the stuff that we do. But I think it was a great cleansing for some of them, especially Joe, that the letter that he wrote. I guarantee you there wasn't one veteran listening to this, whether it was the ones that performed or the people that were listening in, that were not affected by his homecoming letter.
That was Jim McGovern.
Oh, Jim McGovern, sorry. I mean, it was just a wonderful thing. And again, he probably would have never done that except for this outlet that he had with the theater workshop. So I think it really helped and did its job, so to speak. So, and the other thing is, none of us had an ego about being an actor. Okay. I mean, I mean, I'm sure Tina, this, and Michael, when you work with actors, they all got certain egos, right? I'm an actor, I can do this. Well, we weren't. And we were learning as we went along. And again, the fact that Michael was there just made the process so much easier for us. Because a couple of us had chatted offline about, how things went and so on. And that was the common denominator between what everyone was saying to everyone else. It was like, Michael had made this so easy for us. So, he did a wonderful job.
It does sound like a divine combination.
You know what? Don't.
Well, I do want to get, there's a lot of questions in here, and I do apologize to everybody for not getting them in, and we need to get to dinner soon. But reflecting a lot of the comments in the chat is that your incredible generosity, Patrick, of sharing yourself, and Michael for you of guiding so gently the people through. I do want to get one real quick question. Kathy Harmer asked, do you ever hold workshops for veterans to have the opportunity to write their monologues of their experiences? I just wanted to get that one out there before we close.
I haven't participated in any. They very well might exist. I don't know. Patrick would know better in terms of the eternal.
Not familiar with any.
It's certainly a valuable. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I agree.
Obviously, post-COVID pandemic,
Sure. Yeah, but it sounds like your experience was a wonderful example of the healing that can happen and the, as you say, the communion, Michael, that can exist between people with children. Well, we didn't even get to Dublin, you guys, and we didn't get to Beckett, and but we'll do this again, and just center in on I wish you both a wonderful St. Patrick's Day.
Thank you.
And thank you for being so generous with your time and your stories.
Well, thank you for allowing me to.
Oh, no, it was my pleasure. Yeah.
Thank you.
And Michael, we still have to talk about Beckett.
Yes. Oh, I look forward to
go on for hours. And
yes.
Well, thank you both so much for being here, and to you, our lovely audience, for being here as well. And I do hope that you will think about joining us next Saturday at 5 p.m. when Jeffrey Stanley joins us at the ITA dinner table. Jeffrey's a Fulbright scholar from 2018, 2019. He went to India, and he did a lot of very interesting work on the Bengali film and theater, and studying that over in India. And he's an NYU scholar. He has got his master's in writing, and we're going to talk to him about writing for film, writing for TV, and writing for the theater, and what it was like being a Fulbright scholar in India. So that's coming up next week, next Saturday. And I hope you'll join us at 5 p.m. And in the meantime, be well, be safe. I hope you get a vaccine, and we hope to see you at the dinner table next Saturday at 5. Take care.